Alrighty, apologies for my late incoming. Hi Randall, hi Katie, hi everybody. Hi Michelle, thank you. Michelle's going to be joining this conversation. I'm actually going to be standing for this talk because I've been standing instead of sitting at my desk all day, which has helped a lot for my back. And I was a little late because I was making myself some tea, which I have with raw milk, which in itself is a big trigger for people if I talk about milk and dairy. Understandably so. So yeah, veganism, big topic. A lot of feelings and emotions that surround this conversation. And so I am going to be as sensitive as I can, but also as honest and real about my personal journey in my health and in my body and my relationship to food and nourishment. So, hello Rose Room Cafe. Hello Breaths and Beats. Alrighty. I think we can begin to... So yeah, I'm going to also save this talk because there's so much in it. It's also helped me to understand racial relations based on disembodiment. But it's big and it's complex. So I'll start with the basics of food, nourishment, and health. I went on the vegan journey about, I was like 21, 22 when it was a whole big thing. And I very much cared about the environment and I wanted to be part of a group of people that looked or appeared to be fighting for the earth and for nature. And of course that was what I believed in, so I jumped on that train and I stopped eating meat, and I even went down the raw food path because that was also a big movement in health at the time. When I started going down that journey, I noticed that my skin started breaking out and that I felt very tired. I also felt aggressively angry at everybody else. There was this feeling of superiority and separation, whereby I was now doing something for the earth and everybody else and my family around me were bad because they were still eating meat and they were still drinking milk in their coffee. So it felt, outside of the vegan group, a very lonely path of healing and caring. Eventually I started losing my period because I was eating so much fruit and supplementing my protein for carbohydrates, vegetables. I wasn't a very good vegan, so I understand that there are people here who follow the bean and lentil protocol and are really good about getting their protein in. For me personally, I didn't have the time and, maybe discipline to keep up with the needs of my physical body's protein and fat needs. So I lost my period. I didn't bleed for 2 years. It was very traumatic, actually. It was very traumatic because when you don't bleed as a woman, you feel not like a woman. And it's actually emotional because it was 2 years of feeling like my body wasn't happy. My body wasn't working as it should because the greatest miracle as a woman is to bleed and to be able to produce life. And so I'm getting upset because I was so shamed by some of the community of people in that world for wanting to go back to eating meat and wanting to go back to listening to my body, because something was very wrong in my system. And this is why I get quite angry about this as well, because I've decided to do this talk today because I've had women come to me telling me that their bodies are hungry for meat and fat, and they're vegans, and they feel so much shame. They feel shame from their partners. They have boyfriends or men in their life or women in their life judging them for wanting to eat what their body is asking them to eat. And this is where I have a big problem and a big important message. No one should be telling you how to eat. The only person who you should listen to with regards to what you put in your body is your own body. And that was the most important message that I ever received on my journey. Because many of us are not living in our bodies. We are living in our minds. We are waiting for some book or some nutritionist or some doctor or some spiritual person to tell us what the next best diet is and what the next best, way of eating is. And each one of us have a very unique microbiome, a very unique system of digestion, blood group. I mean, all of these things play a role in how the body absorbs nutrients and how the body functions. And if we are shaming people for what they eat and what their body needs, we are partaking in the very thing that we are trying to stop, which is the destructive relationship to the body of the planet Earth. And this gets into the topic of death. So, Enzicle has just said the urge to kill people. When I went and met the witches and the wise women and the healing that helped me to really get strong and healthy and back in my body, I remember, so actually let me just go back. Before the witches, I was in the vegan community, judging everybody around me, losing my period, feeling depleted, wanting to save the planet, which also, by the way, if you believe that you're here to save the planet, there is a big issue there, because that comes again from this separatist centralizing of the human. The planet does not need saving, and we are not separate from the planet. So let me just get to this point about privilege, because that was big. As a white privileged woman who could go to vegan restaurants, it became very easy for me living in London to be a vegan. And so therefore I expected everybody else should be a vegan too, because, I was spending my dollars only on vegan foods. I then went on a trip to America and ended up meeting an Indigenous woman who told me about what was happening to their waters. I had these deep, tingly sensations, which I call truth bumps, when my soul is listening. So when you get goosebumps, those are truth bumps. That's the soul listening in and saying, okay, something here is resonating. And she told me to please come with her to Standing Rock, where there were all these Indigenous tribes protesting against the oil pipeline. And so I was like, alrighty, let's go. We drove up to North Dakota, and when we arrived at the reservation and started setting up camps, the first thing I volunteered to do was to make food. As a vegan, I assumed and expected that everybody else in the camps were going to eat my vegan food. The response that I got from the chiefs and the elders of these Native American groups was one of great disrespect, because by me not serving meat at the table, they felt in their culture a deep level of disrespect. And it was then that I realized how privileged it was for me to be shouting this whole vegan thing when the communities and the people who've been in communication and in relation with nature and animals for centuries, that's true wholeness. That's truly what we are actually looking for, because animals and humans die and are reborn. We eat each other, we love each other. We're in a cyclical relationship. When we separate ourselves from the animal world by saying, we're protecting you because we won't eat you, what we're actually doing is removing ourselves from the natural world. And you literally feel it in your body as a human being. I felt disconnected to my body because I wasn't bleeding, which was the most earthly thing I could possibly do. So that was my first big humbling experience, where I realized, wow, here I am proclaiming something that is so a part of this indigenous culture that I look to actually for what it means to be a true earth citizen, what it means to be in reciprocation with nature. I'm gonna just ignore the questions of attack, the killing culture stuff. My darling, killing and eating and dying has always been a part of our culture. And maybe I'm not getting through to you, but I'm going to continue with the conversation. It was beautiful. We had bison, we ate, everyone felt nourished, people were full and energized. And I started to let go of the toxic shame that was preventing me from listening to my own body's internal wisdom. And slowly but surely, I began the journey of nourishment and stopped the superiority, masculine, patriarchal, masked as veganism and being good, which was actually this perpetuation of control and punishment. And punishment is denial, denying oneself of what we feel we need. When you are very embodied, when you are really feeling yourself, you know what it is that you need. And I'm not telling you to go and eat meat. God, I'm not telling you to, drink milk. I'm just asking that we stop shaming one another and stop dividing ourselves into these camps where one camp knows better than the other camp, because that separation is the same separation that veganisms are trying to fight for, which is the separation from the planet. And so I don't want to lose my train of thought, but I then, began this journey of nourishment and stopped the denial of foods like butter, like cheese, like local dairy that I get from a raw farm. I get my raw milk, which is divine for me, and it's helped my menstrual cycle and my body. And so, the message is to be very aware of the deeply embedded white supremacist, superior disconnection, disembodiment that we are living in. And it's so complex because in our minds, we think we're doing good. We really believe we're doing good, but we're doing it from this place that is so disembodied. So I could be this angry, shouting vegan, but my literal body was no longer bleeding, was no longer being fed, was being punished by a mental belief that was being fed to me by, honestly, like some raw vegan dude that had a very different body type to me and who perhaps didn't need as much fat and protein as I did to birth a human being from my womb. And that is why I get very emotional about this, because women need fat and protein. And when we do not have that level of fat and protein, we will not have a cycle. And it will be dangerous for the baby. And so it's really important that we think even beyond our own bodies, but for the potential of the life that we're birthing into this earth, and to stop this shaming and disconnecting that we are perpetuating. Anyway, so that was one experience. The other thing, yes, that is very important for my nature conservationists and to the people like me that are here for reconnection to earth, reconnection to nature, reconnection to our bodies, reconnection to one another's body. There's actually a book. I don't know if anyone's read that book called Where the Wild Things Are. I don't know if you've read that book, but there's a line in that book that says, I love you so much, we will eat you. Like, please don't leave us. We love you so much, we will eat you. And this same line actually came to me when I was living in upstate New York. And hi there, you mother. No, I'm not a mother. I'm a mother of many, and I'm not a physical mother as of now. So I'm going back to this idea of I love you so much, I'll eat you. So I was on the farm living in upstate New York, and my herbal teacher had goats, and her relationship to her goats was like nothing I'd ever witnessed before. And she was explaining, we would make goat yogurt and goat cheese and walk the goats out in the forest. And she had such a beautiful relationship to her animals. And I was still healing this very, very embedded, shameful vegan story that I'd been bought into or persuaded into, perhaps. And I realized what she meant by I love my animals so much I will eat them. I love you so much I'll eat you. When you kind of like cuddling somebody and we want to consume each other. Nature is death, people. Can we stop being so fucking afraid of dying, of death, of destruction? When I die, when I'm killed, whatever happens, my body will compost into the earth and the earth will eat me. In fact, all the bugs and spiders will eat me happily. I'm going to have a green, burial so that any animal can eat me too. We can't deny the reality of eating and living and dying and loving and consuming. And that is the real cycle reciprocity of nature. When we look at nature as this thing that needs to be preserved and that needs to be healed, that needs to be saved and protected, we remove ourselves from being nature, from being a part of that system. And it's not working, and it doesn't work because we have to embody, we have to come back to our bodies, and our bodies are these beautiful, beautiful examples of nature. And the period thing, the blood cycle, the menstrual cycle, my desire to eat fats and protein and meats and whatever, fish, whatever proteins that were locally available, allowed me to come back into my body and to then really connect with the earth's body, and then further to connect with, you know, people of color's body. If I had not been in my body because I was so adamant about being this staunch, angry vegan, I would never have gone through to the next journey of connecting to my menstrual cycle, connecting to the earth's cycle, and then connecting to this deeper embodied trauma of my superior, supremacist white race thing that actually lived underneath all of these layers. And so it's weird that I'm weaving that into this conversation, but I'm starting to see all these little pieces and how real white people's toxic shame is, and how that toxic shame then gets recreated in certain communities that think they're doing good, like veganism, where we then go on to shame others because that's what we know. You know, women, it's the same with like women's work. There's this now shaming of women in the transgender community because we're leaving people out, and it's becoming this like camps of shaming and camps of division. And we gotta be just really embodied, which requires food and nourishment, not denial and punishment, to really feel in our core what is actually true. Like, what is actually true for me outside of this book or social media account or like movement that's telling me to do this thing that, you know, actually my body's saying no. And death is huge. That's why I think the killing thing. Okay, so something very important. I do want to acknowledge deeply and compassionately the importance of the vegan movement, because it did in fact bring awareness to the very revolting practices of factory farming. Thank fuck that we got that out and into the light, and people started realizing like, yo, I am not going to be buying, you know, packaged meat from grocers. I don't eat packaged meat from grocery stores. I go out to the farms. My dad goes to a farm. He gets a whole animal that he splits between the family. We know the journey of that animal's life. So I'm not saying that I do not encourage people to go and just like flat out eat meat. That's an American and actually South African, I guess a lot of places where we've also gone too far on the pendulum swing, where we did become these ravenous, disconnected humans that believed they could just do what they want, very gluttonous and greedy. Yes, that's disgusting, and we have to change that. And so the pendulum swung, into the vegan camp, and it was like the opposite end of the camp, where it was like, no, we can't do this at all. And so what we're kind of slowly doing is coming back into the middle and realizing, okay, so, you know, there's a moderation here, there's a relationship here, there's a respectful way to be in reciprocity with the earth and with her animals. And, my teacher was speaking about this. It's not the animals or the earth that need help. It's our relationship to them that needs mending. It's our relationship to how we treat animals, how we, hold ceremony when we eat. Are we praying, at each meal and looking at how far it has come to be on our plate? Do we feel that gratitude as we, drink and eat? And that embodied conscious awareness of eating and nourishing ourselves is what reweaves the connection to nature and the healing of nature that a lot of us are so busy fighting for. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna look at some of the questions we're on the primary thinking when we're being open. Okay, something else that was also in line with this idea is smoking. My friend was asking Susan about smoking and how, we've made smoking so bad and smokers so bad. But I sometimes have some mullein and I smoke a joint, and I've removed the toxic shame that comes with the action, because it's not the plant that's bad. We've shamed tobacco and these plants and we've made them evil, but it's our relationship to the spirit of the plants that has been severed and that needs the work. And that's the same that I was saying about animals. It's our relationship to these natural things that are around us that we as the humans need to start consciously creating a connection with. And that looks like many different things. It looks like putting your blood in the earth. It looks like hugging trees. It looks like, sending a gratitude. Smoking has been used as a way of healing in so many cultures. It's our culture in the West that have abused the relationship with that spirit of the plant. It's our culture in the West that have abused the relationship to protein and meat. And so it's up to us to not impose our beliefs on other cultures, but to look inside at where this root of disconnect comes from. Because when we are connected and when we are embodied, we do not want to pose harm on anything. We're here to love, and we're here to enjoy and to feel and to, be nourished and enjoy the pleasures that are gifted to us freely by the environment. And so we gift back. We gift back. And Topes, you're here. Ways of the Wise Woman. Yes. Okay, let me see. Protein, fats, blame. Also so much blame and shame around fat. Oh my God, fat is my life. I love fat. My favorite food is fat. I freaking love fat. Butter. I eat so much butter. I swear butter and kefir healed my gut, my candida. My anxiety was all related to this yearning for fat, because I'd been starving and punishing myself as a young girl to be this picture perfect figure. So much punishment. Like, let's cut the fucking punishment already. We are good. We can forgive ourselves. And I think this kind of correlates to the race thing, which I'll get into. I'm just seeing if there's any more. Gets a little bit into what I've been realizing with white people's relationship to race, particularly here in South Africa. It's as though so deep down inside, like centuries and centuries and centuries worth of disconnect from our bodies, disconnect from the earth's body, this feeling of being uprooted. We've been colonizing and running around the world, placing our fucking sticks and staffs in other people's lands. And so we're so far from our own lands. And that disconnect from the earth has caused this deep trauma of disconnect from our own bodies, and therefore disconnect to our own partners, our own families. And then, of course, an even deeper disconnect to people of color. And Ntupela, if you're on here, Ntupela has broken open so much in me, because I've realized how many layers there are. There are so many layers of healing that I'm going through. And it started with my body. It started with how I was starving and punishing and dieting and, denying my body of nourishment. And then it got into like the sexual trauma, and then it got into my disconnect from the natural world and my feeling of not being native to any place, and sitting in circles with Indigenous elders and realizing how far away their wisdom was from what I knew as a white person. And I'm just being so emotional today. But it's fucking hard, and I'm not saying that it's an excuse, but I'm saying that I am compassionate to how difficult it can feel when we're stuck in these shame bodies, to actually go ahead and take action and start healing these wounds of separation. Because we're not happy, people. Nobody wants to be the abuser. Nobody wants to be the colonizer. Like, nobody wants to be the bad guy. It's the same for white men. Like, that's not what anyone wants to feel. And so we have to really go deep into the dirty roots. And I just sent an email about this, of like smelling the shit of like what we've done and how deeply disconnected we are. And yeah, so I guess it starts like, get your feet in the soil, get your hands in the dirt, you know, eat the blood and the fat and the meat, and do what it is that's going to make you feel human and feel rooted again and connected again. And then we can start the process of really looking at our brothers and sisters and seeing where this separation lies and where this shame lies. You mean like veganism is a way to justify shaming people? It's not a way to justify shaming people. All I'm saying is, when it comes to veganism, let's just let go of pointing fingers. Let's just let go of telling other people what to do with their bodies. Because when we tell other people what to do with their bodies, that's the same shit that we do to people of color. That's the same type of rhetoric that we have with the planet. Like, get out of telling other people what to do. Yes, and same with dudes. Stop telling your partners that they can't eat meat. Like, that's not okay. Stop telling anyone what they should do with their body. It's your fucking body. Get embodied. Feel into, you know, what it is you need and what it is that you desire. And yeah, it's, at the end of the day, it's all going to be in love. Yeah, I was also going to invite Michelle on. Michelle, do you want to come and talk a little bit? So I don't have the scientific perspective, but I do have a friend who has been doing more research on the cycles and the importance of animals in like permaculture and in actual factual, because I know some people here are more maybe scientific and need that level of information to help them to believe. My work is very intuitive and emotional, and yeah, it comes from experiential knowledge. But I do understand that sometimes you need a scientific thing to tell you, like, look, the earth needs this and that. Yes, you can definitely be less destructive with meat consumption, less destructive with how we treat our bodies. But I'm feeling like we got it all, unless anyone has any okay, so Michelle, you have to request to join the live. Yeah, we're going to continue this discussion with Michelle. I think you say request to join. I don't actually know where you do it. Maybe the comment. Turn off request to go live. No, it's on. It should say on your thing to request. Yay, Caroline. I'm so happy to hear that. I really have had so many women come to me and be like, I've started eating meat again and I feel amazing and I'm so glad that I can come and talk to you. And there was like this very scary thing going on where women weren't able to tell their friends that they wanted to eat meat because we were like so into this shaming thing. So yeah. I also want to say, you know, if you're vegan and you're a woman and you're doing great and you're bleeding and you're doing your thing, fuck yes, sister. Like, do you. As everyone's been saying, do you. But do not tell other people how to live and how to be in their bodies. Please. That's the root of our disconnect and our perpetuation of things in other realms. But yeah. Oh, here we go. Michelle has requested.
Hey.
Yay! Hello, love. Good for you for coming on, even when you weren't feeling it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you convinced me. I'm really resonating with your stories. And yeah, like you said, I think it's really important. And I've experienced this a lot with my clients that come to me for nutrition. So the shame aspect of it, I mean.
Yeah, so much shame.
Yeah, but I really loved everything that you said. And I think, whenever I'm doing my sort of, I guess, roundup of the different categories of how we can relate to the subject, it's usually, for me, it's in three categories. It's in the health category, the environment category, and then the ethics category. And I think you touched on all of those kind of in a very interwoven way, which was nice. But I think one interesting thing from the science point of view that people might be interested in checking out is this very interesting study done on a farm called White Oak Pastures. And it's a farm in the US. And what they did is measure carbon, the amount of carbon that's emitted and stored by their farm. And it's really amazing because they have a grass-fed beef farm, and they actually sequester carbon into the soil. So basically, it's a negative carbon effect. It's actually healthy for the environment, and it's helping carbon be stored. And you can on the paper that's done about look at that compared to some of the vegan burgers like Beyond Burger or Impossible
Wow.
Burger. And those burgers still actually emit carbon, whereas this farm, you know, actually sequesters carbon into the soil, which is amazing. And the way in which I like to see farmers is they're stewards of the land, so they just try to recreate nature in as close to how nature should be. And the animal has its role in this symbiosis. So, the chickens, the pigs, the cows, everyone has their role.
Yes.
And the farmer is sort of a facilitator of that, rather than, when we think of industrialized farming, it's very much, one monocrop or, the feedlot cows, and it's just very imposing, whereas it's more, which I think is really amazing. And, going out of your way to actually support these farmers. If you go and buy a burger from White Oak Pastures, you're actually contributing towards carbon sequestering and environmental good. If you go out and buy Impossible or a burger or Beyond Burger, you're not doing that. So it's kind of
Interesting. So like a contradiction really in what we think we're trying to do, but when we actually look at the science behind it and dig deeper, it shows actually the opposite. So that's really important to know.
Yeah, it does show the opposite. And again, it can just be, we're all against the same. I mean, most people, I think, would agree that industrialization is bad, and that's what vegans are against, and that's what most people are against. So really, we're all on the same side. It just becomes very
Yes.
confused when it's sort of like you said, veganism is this and we're on this side, and then if you're paleo or if you're just kind of eating a balanced diet, you're somehow on another side. It's like everyone's on the same side, which is, we don't like industrialization, so let's just do a new way of farming and eating and being. I think that's really nice to keep in mind, that everyone kind of does want the same thing. It's just, yeah, like you said, the understanding how that manifests. And when it comes to the the ethics, even I read a stat about a wheat farm in Australia. It kills 25 times more animals than a beef farm in Australia. And the reason per pound, so 25 times per pound of usable protein. And the reason for that is because of, you know, when you're doing a monocrop like wheat or corn or soy, it's like the little bugs and the insects and the field mice and all of these animals that get killed in the process of industrialized farming. It's just that we feel less sorry for them somehow because we don't anthropomorphize. And that's the thing, I think, you know, the anthropomorphizing of animals and mammals, we can relate to them more, you know, they behave and look more similar to us than, say, like an insect. But it's not the case that you're vegan and you're actually killing less. That's just not true. You know, it's just that you're that you have maybe a stronger affinity to, but that's not really based on anything except, you know,
conditioned mindset of what's, yeah, and I guess that comes back to this idea of death, because it's a mammal seems closer to the human, and the human death is something so feared. So anything to avoid that, looking at death, but an animal and a little insect that dies, it's kind of like you can sweep it away. And so we're confronted with our real discomfort and shame around death, and which is a cycle of nature, really.
and whenever I go to South Africa in particular, and I go to the plant nursery, I see, you know, I think there's actually a fertilizer brand even called Blood and Bones. There's, you know, plants are not even vegan. Plants enjoy the minerals from bones and from blood, and then that's how they. So
they love my menstrual blood. Oh my God, my plants grow from blood. Blood is like the most nutritious thing.
Yeah, it's so I think a lot, at least from what I've read, a lot of people who've been vegan and then decided to start farming have actually stopped being vegan when they started farming because they realized that it just doesn't work in terms of, you know, you kind of have to resort to more chemical fertilizers and these type of things if you're going to totally avoid animals as part of the ecosystem, which, you know, which just doesn't make sense. And so
Wow.
but again, you know, when like I told the story about London, it's really easy to sort of have this confirmation bias and be living in this infosphere of people who are doing the same thing as you. And it's not until you actually start trying to farm or do something you realize like, oh, this actually doesn't make any sense. So
Totally. It's and that's what I mean. It's like a disembodied activism, a disconnected form of trying to do good, because indigenous people, when you live with them and how they fish, I mean, you would be robbing people of a way of life that has been happening for centuries. You know, the fishermen that go out in their boats, and just the way that they communicate and live on the land. It's because we live in these silos cities where we can just imagine that we're doing good, but really, as you say, when you get on the land, when you get on the farm, you actually start to experience and see that cycle and reciprocity and the importance of each individual part. And we are a part of that part.
yeah, you know, and speaking in a very sort of practical way, it's that, you know, the reason we buy farmers because they are the ones who are facilitating the earth to continue in the way that's closest to nature. We have that exchange with them for that reason, because they're the stewards of the earth who do it in the way, like as you said, is the most embodied. So, and also the other very practical thing is that, you know, people say, okay, I mean, one argument that I've heard is, okay, so we can use, let's say, cow poop and chickens and you know, for fertilizer and these type of things, but why do we have to eat? That's something that people will ask in regards to the sustainable agricultural aspect of it. And, you know, aside from everything you said about the health aspect of it, that's really important, is that we are the predators now. You know, we don't have natural predators in the same way. So actually, it would be harmful if we didn't eat some of the animals. There wouldn't be that balance of keeping them. We just don't have as many large animals in the way that we would before. before the populated. So we're kind of in that role, but it seems like an odd thing because if we're not physically doing it, we're sort of paying farmers to do it. And this is just the natural progression of the modern world that you can, I guess, try to resist by doing your own hunting, which would be awesome, but that, so, and supporting their work.
Yeah, wow, that's a really also interesting way to look at it, because if we were to like have the predator in mind, those people who are worrying about certain animals, like those animals would be dying if we didn't get rid of the other higher up, the hierarchy. And so, yeah, it is like a rethink of how loving we are with animals.
Yeah. Cool. So
Cool. That was so beautiful and so important. Thank you so much for sharing. And guys, please follow, ladies, and I don't want to just say guys. This is a new thing I'm doing. So if anyone else wants to join me, is the erasing women in words. So I've been being very conscious of saying guys and actually saying women and ladies. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But thank you, women. I'm going to repost this on my page. I'll put Michelle's Instagram so you can also follow her and see what she does. But yeah, thank you so much for your wisdom, and
for asking me. It was great. I loved the way in which you weaved it together at the beginning. It made a lot of sense through a personal story. So
yeah, and actually I did want to end with this beautiful quote that like I was really feeling today, because I don't want to say anything's good or bad. It's really about compassion for both sides and both experiences and places. And so the quote's from Bell Hooks, and she says, "For me, forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoings, but yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe that everyone has the capacity to be transformed?" So I really like that. Because it also it relates to what's happening right now in our racial divides, and to remind my white family and friends that there has been wrongdoing, and let's be compassionate and hold ourselves accountable and do this work, and know that in our hearts the transformations are coming and happening, and to really remain in our hearts, because that will allow for healing and unity when we're not chained.
I mean, everyone is really on the same side. Like you said, no one wants to be the bad guy or the asshole or whatever. It's just we just come to heads, especially on social media. It can be very one-dimensional also, and you don't have the face with the world that's the same as something in person. So I think it feeds into divide sometimes. But yeah,
true.
But that's a lot of discussion. Yeah.
Alrighty, yeah, it's probably gonna close now. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thanks, Annette, for us.
Always, of course. I appreciate you. Lots of love, everyone. Bye.